Hey guys! This is part 2 of What If Shikamaru was the main character. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 6 Tanu. Tanu was huge. Massive. We had never seen a city this big before. Growing up in a hidden village usually meant growing up with the mentality that said sphere of influence was the center of the world. It was even easier to fall for it when one lived in Konoha, the largest of the main 5. Seeing the capital of the Land of Fire, however, was a grim reminder of reality, that Konoha's special status as a sovereign city-state only existed as a result of a delicate balancing game with the daimyo of the Land of Fire and his troops. It made sense that the Fire Daimyo had military forces outside of Konohagakure no Sato. The Land of Fire was the most populous of the 5 elemental nations, just as Konoha was the most populous of the 5 main hidden villages. They couldn't rely on a, relatively, tiny city of shinobi alone to man all of their borders. The army of the daimyo was probably large enough to raze Konoha to the ground, if they all marched against us in their entirety. Of course, such a conflict wouldn't come without major costs to both parties. Despite our numbers, we'd be able to inflict some major damage against the regular soldiers, too. It was said that one shinobi, even a genin, was worth 10 soldiers. The good ones could probably wipe out entire formations single-handedly. And just because a village was destroyed, didn't mean that shinobi could be defeated. Ideals survived longer than people, and all it would take was one vengeful Anbu to escape the carnage. And the next time the daimyo went to sleep, the same worked in reverse, though. If we overstepped a certain bound of insubordination, then, ninja village or not, the whole Land of Fire would turn against us. An economic if not military-based revenge. For now, though, our relations with our daimyo seemed friendly enough, considering that his wife was always at the mission desk every other weekend. The same could not be said for Suna and the Wind Daimyo, and I wondered if higher pricing was the only thing that was causing the Wind Daimyo to outsource missions to Konoha. Had they offended him in the past somehow? But of course, neither of them were stupid enough to attack each other, and so using another hidden village as a scapegoat was the next best thing. Still, the sheer size and number of people in Tanu was quite overwhelming. And it was then that I also realized that while normal people might fear shinobi, they really didn't think twice about us as individuals. Though the hidden villages were actually a misnomer, since by now they were large enough for easy access, most people had never actually dealt with our sort personally. As far as they were concerned, we were our own separate little world. People don't trust us, do they? Ino asked. Even though the streets were packed full of people, we never seemed to have any problems with personal space. It didn't matter that Ino, Naruto, and I were all still only children. One look at our forehead protectors, and everyone, from noble to street rat, went scurrying in the opposite direction. It wasn't so much that they were afraid we'd stab them in the middle of this open street, seeing as we were walking around with our faces exposed, except Kakashi-sensei. But Ino was right. Shinobi made a living off lies and deceit. I didn't blame them for keeping their distance. Though all the same I don't think it protected them very well from the likes of Kakashi Hatake. We shinobi lives secret lives. Travelers and such interact with us commonly, so they know what we do, but unless you've actually lived in a hidden village, you wouldn't know how, Kakashi-sensei explained, sporting an odd, ugly-looking red fez hat that hadn't been there before. Reaching up, he removed it from his head and immediately foisted it off on the next closest person walking past us. Things you take for granted, like sticking to walls or jumping from tree to tree, are magnificent feats of strength for these people. When people say shinobi, they think of boogeymen, of inhuman creatures that live in the shadows and only come out to slit your throats at night. I snorted. So Anbu. There was a loud crash, and I didn't even have to turn to realize that whoever Kakashi-sensei had stolen the hat from had collided with the person he had disposed of it on. Kakashi-sensei shrugged. Yes and no. We generally don't assign assassination missions to kids under 18, unless you're a special case like Itachi Uchiha, and of course look where that got us. Still, remember that you're all trained killers. If you can hit a target with a kunai, then you can hit a person too, Ino paled. But what if I'm not that type of person? What if I'm more of a spying shinobi instead of a killing shinobi? Well then, one day you might make a mistake, and someone will catch you. At that point, you can either slit his throat before he raises the alarm, or get your throat slit because you knew how to use a knife but was too squeamish to do it, Kakashi-sensei remarked flippantly. Ino didn't say much after that. Do they really hate us that much? Naruto asked, watching a mother push her child over to her other side as she kept an eye on the four of us warily. Hate? Not really. They simply don't understand us. And what people don't understand, people fear. Very few people have knowledge of what we can really do. They only hear exaggerated tales from the grapevine, further amplified and darkened by the aura of mystery that surrounds us, which, as you know, is completely unfounded, because literally anyone can walk into the academy on a sunny summer day and sign up their kid for next year's class. I don't like being judged, Naruto said moodily, shoving his hands into his pockets. Well, get used to it, because that's the way the world spins. You might as well use it to your advantage. Besides, don't take it personally. Look at all the people in this city. You're 1 out of a million. People really won't care enough to remember you for a bad reason unless you give them a good reason to. At this, he tapped the right shoulder of a man who had been unfortunate enough to walk in front of us, and quickly sidestepped to his left when the man turned his head. There was a muffled thump and some indignant yelling. Evidently, the man he had tricked had accidentally run into a display case while he hadn't been looking forward, if the trinkets strewn about the street were any indication. But we already have a reason, don't we? Naruto asked. We're ninja. Just because you're a ninja doesn't automatically mean that people will care. And if they do, then it's certainly not about you as a person, said Kakashi-sensei. You do realize that no one here even cares that the Shinobi World Wars even happened, right? Naruto was flabbergasted. But, even I know that. And I ditched half the days at the academy, at least, Kakashi-sensei shrugged. It's amazing, isn't it? How little people know about things that don't affect them directly? You look at all those names carved into the memorial stone, and think of how many more were left widowed, orphaned, and friendless, and all for what? It doesn't matter to any of these people. All of the fighting in those secret wars took place on rough terrain far from these urban centers. It was always our sphere. Never theirs. Oh, thank you? What? Kakashi-sensei shrugged, holding up a misshapen package wrapped in brown tissue paper. Someone just gave this to me. Did they actually hand it to you, or did it merely exchange hands when you bumped into that person? Ino asked, hands on her hips. Kakashi-sensei folded back the corner of the paper to peek inside. From my angle, I couldn't see very clearly, but it looked like some kind of cloth, light blue in color with leafy flower patterns. It was just an accident. I'll be giving this back. I suppose you would have said they gave it to me had it been the latest copy of that book you always read? Ino asked. Now, would I ever do something like that? Yes, the three of us answered simultaneously. Youngsters are so disrespectful nowadays, Kakashi-sensei sighed. How are we going to survive here for the whole week again? Ino mouthed to me. I shrugged. Just close your eyes and pretend it's all a bad dream. Yeah, one called reality, she sniffed. What was that? Kakashi-sensei asked. Nothing, she said quickly. It sure sounded like something. It was nothing. Honestly, he stopped in the middle of major intersection, completely ignorant of the fact that he was now blocking traffic in the busiest square in Tanu, to level Ino with a deadpan stare. You're a very bad liar, Ino. We'll have to fix that. Ino wrinkled her nose defiantly. I don't know what you're talking about. Better. But you have to sound more dismissive of others' opinions when you lie. That way they not only start questioning your dishonesty, but also their own version of the truth, he said, flipping his book back open, and without changing his walking pace, also blindsiding two horse-drawn carts at once so that they ended up swerving and barely missing each other. Did he actually plan that, or was it just an accident? Naruto whispered. I wouldn't be surprised if chaos was a physical entity strapped to the bottom of his sandals, said Ino, giggling. Strangely enough, while Kakashi-sensei was completely deaf to the earth-shattering curses that the cart drivers were throwing in our direction, he managed to hear our whispers among the cacophonous crowd perfectly fine, because about 2 minutes later he had his revenge by disappearing off into thin air and leaving us stranded in the middle of an unfamiliar metropolis with nothing but our backpacks and the man we were supposed to guard. Luckily, he had done this before, when we were on that mission tracking Tora down in Konoha's slums, so we were prepared to do our own navigation. And while we were extremely annoyed at Kakashi-sensei's antics, who wouldn't be, we also remembered our lesson. When we had gotten news of the C rank the previous week, we had also gotten mission parameters dictating that we would be spending several days in areas that were very easy to get lost, or temporarily abandoned, in. As soon as that meeting had ended, the three of us had gone straight to the map corner of the library to research the most recently updated diagrams of Suna and Tanu, and the trails connecting them to each other and to Konoha. Where's the Jonin? The merchant suddenly asked, looking around. Ino smiled cheerfully and pointed off in a random direction where Gyoza-san's nearsighted eyes couldn't follow. He's right there, sir. No, he wasn't. It's a standard scouting procedure. No, it wasn't. He'll be back soon enough. No, he wouldn't. Oh. All right. You kids, the man cleared his throat uncomfortably. You people, do you know your way around this city? I have the road plans memorized, sir, I told him smoothly. This wasn't a lie, at least. You and your goods are safe with us. Right, Naruto? Naruto grinned foxily. No one's going to be robbing you while we're around. Believe it! At our confidence-inspiring speeches, our client relaxed visibly. All right. If you say so. Did we just lie to our own client? Ino whispered. Excuse me, but it is called bluffing, my cute students, Naruto whispered back, imitating Kakashi-sensei. There's a difference. Bullshit, I called. Ino turned her giggle into a cough. Eventually, despite Kakashi-sensei's absence, or rather, because of it, since he was no longer around to congest traffic, we managed to deliver the client to his hotel on schedule. When we carried his bags up to his room, however, Kakashi-sensei was already there waiting for us. Just kidding. It was a scarecrow. There was a note tacked to its front. Naruto snatched it off. My cute students, he read slowly. I am afraid that I have gotten lost on the road of life again. Please find me before the end of the week, as the fire daimyo will be throwing a festival to honor his late father and movement through the streets will be close to impossible. What? Ino yelled, grabbing the paper from Naruto and rereading it carefully. That jerk. Why here, of all places? This is the largest city in all of the elemental nations. It'll be impossible to find him even with a time limit of a week. Is there a problem? Gyoza-san asked, scratching his head. No, sir, Ino growled, crumpling the note in her fist. There was a spark of a fire jutsu, and the paper ignited, smoking and shriveling like what remained of our hopes of having a semi-pleasant stay in Tanu. Throwing the ashes to the floor, she ground the dust into the wooden boards with the heel of her sandal and stalked off. Is she okay? Gyoza-san asked, shaking. After all, normal 12-year-old girls didn't set papers on fire with only their breath just because they were angry. Sir, we're shinobi. We're never okay, I deadpanned, but at least we'll do our best to make sure you are, right? Naruto added, cheerful and morally upright as always. This seemed to placate him, and he retired for the night. How the hell are we supposed to do this? Ino whined. In our contract, we're supposed to be keeping an eye on Gyoza-san for the whole week as he does his business. How are we supposed to guard him and look for Kakashi-sensei at the same time? Well, I guess we should have seen this coming, what with him disappearing and all, I said. He had played this version of I Spy Hide and Seek with us before, but never like this. Usually we'd have set boundaries like a certain range of blocks in Konoha or a certain expanse of forest. Never before had we had to search something as huge as the entire city of Tanu, and never before had he put us at a whole half-hour disadvantage as he did now, seeing as he had abandoned us back at that square. At least we have Naruto's clones, right? I can make enough to search this whole city, if you need me to, Naruto said, puffing out his chest proudly. You do that. Have your clones send you a signal if they see something. Ino and I will keep observation watch. The way Kakashi-sensei played this particular game, if we didn't find him before time was up, and that was always, because it was basically impossible to find Kakashi-sensei if he didn't want to be found, unless your name was Mato Guy, he'd give us a quiz on various random details instead, such as was the lady with the bright red bird-shaped hairpin traveling with a man or a woman? Or was that last question a trick question and was she actually traveling with both a man and a woman? Or was she traveling alone? The quiz would last until we got 3 questions right, 1 each, and every question we got wrong in the meantime was a day spent fulfilling one of Mato Guy's challenge requests. I was mostly fine with it, because the challenges were good training, even if they were crazy, and Naruto was also mostly fine with it, because Tenten didn't hit him like Sakura did or boss him around like Ino did. Ino, however, would do anything to avoid these days. Something about too much youthfulness, and Lee not knowing when to give up. Lee had a massive and borderline obsessive crush on her, which she did not reciprocate, and all of her efforts to look less pretty only served to intensify his admiration for her, because apparently, girls that walked around in baggy camouflage and tight braids were deserving of appreciation for being dedicated to their training. This isn't fair, Ino moaned, burying her head in her hands. This just isn't fair. Sakura-sensei doesn't do this shit to her. That bastard. That ugly, stupid, evil, insane bastard. Just this once, can't we get a break? Huh? What's that? Naruto asked, pointing to a second note that was fluttering to the ground. It had been tacked on the scarecrow's back, instead of the front as the first note had been. He picked it up and unfolded it. And mind your language, Ino. Ino paused mid-rant to stare at the note. Her eye twitched. I shrugged. Told you he's always watching us. This time, Naruto vowed. This time, I'll get him for sure. He silently thanked Shikamaru and Ino for taking him aside and forcing him to learn chakra walking. It was way easier to scan for people from up here than while being stuck in the massive crowd. Days had passed, with no sign of their sensei. After the first 2 days of no luck, Shikamaru had been forced to conclude that Kakashi-sensei was using a physical disguise instead of henge, and that trying to feel for any chakra in the mostly civilian crowd was useless. Not that they'd be able to find him that way if he was really trying anyway. Shikamaru had pointed out that by the time one reached Jonin level, learning how to suppress your own chakra was a must, meaning they were going to go by the old-fashioned way smell. Because they were supposed to be a capture and interrogation team as opposed to a combat team or an intel team, Naruto winced as the memory of Ino beating those particular team-type classifications into his mind. Kakashi-sensei had tested all of their skills in this field early on. What he found was that Ino was the most chakra-sensitive of all of them, with Shikamaru somewhere in between and Naruto at the very end because his chakra control was, to put it simply, absolutely abysmal. However, to balance that out, Kakashi-sensei had also pointed out that his sight, smell, and hearing was way above par for someone without any formal training, so it made sense that Naruto and his clones were going to be running around here now. Naruto scratched his head. He knew he wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed sometimes, but compared to back then, he felt he was a lot better. Some of the things that he liked to do back in the academy seemed pretty stupid now. Maybe that was why Sakura always hit him, but he'd show them. One day, he'd become the Hokage. And then everyone would respect him. Heck, Kakashi-sensei was respected around Konoha, and he was more of a jerk-ass than Sasuke team, though in a not quite obviously jerk-ass way. Because everything he did seemed to be an accident. Even though Shikamaru always insisted that they weren't, though Naruto couldn't quite wrap his mind around the fact that anyone could plan that far ahead. Maybe it was just one of Kakashi-sensei's life lessons. If something works in your favor, always pretend that it was all part of your plan. Even if it wasn't. The weird thing about being on Shikamaru's team, on being on any team, really, was that your teammates' personalities started to bleed over to you a little. He liked Shikamaru, even though the teachers were always going on and on about how he was the most brilliant person in the history of forever to pass through their hands. He never let it make him a jerk like Sasuke did. He didn't make fun of Naruto for not getting things the first time around either. He just treated Naruto just like a normal person and expected him to figure out how to keep up, which led to Ino, who he found wasn't as bad as he thought she was at first, even if she was crazy about Sasuke. Being stuck with her in this team for a while, and vice versa, had led both of them to figure out how to tolerate each other. Sure, she was super bossy, but she was also super cheerful and pumped up about most things, except practicing with Guy's team. Which he didn't get, because that was actually really fun, even if Guy-sensei was arguably even weirder than Kakashi-sensei sometimes. He didn't know what to think about Kakashi-sensei. The guy was even worse than he was. In pranks, that is? Or was it better, because he never seemed to get into trouble for it? He wondered how the academy teachers dealt with a younger Kakashi-sensei. Surely the guy must have started really early in order to be this good. Or maybe he was just crazy, like Shikamaru said. Naruto never pegged Shikamaru as the type to be a conspiracy theorist, and yet, when it came to Kakashi-sensei, the guy seemed to think that everything that happened was on purpose. Naruto wished that he could doubt it. He really did. But considering that Shikamaru had never been wrong before, no time for that now. Naruto suddenly caught a flash of powder blue, was it? Yes, it was. Out of the corner of his eye. There was a person walking along in a kimono, and it was the same pattern as the stuff in the package Kakashi-sensei had stolen, found, when they first arrived in Tanu. Naruto couldn't feel any chakra, but that was probably because Kakashi-sensei was using regular disguises instead of a jutsu like henge, so that Ino couldn't find him so easily among the crowd of civilians. The hair was different, but that was probably just a wig. Anyway, the person had the right height and bone structure, and you couldn't change that with physical means. And yes, that was the Konoha smell on him. It wasn't easy to scrub out years of forest and tree sap. Found him. Naruto, who was actually a clone, dispersed, and the real Naruto, who was finishing their mission with Shikamaru and Ino, felt the slight resulting shock. Where? His teammates asked, quickly jumping into action. Powder blue kimono, for a clock. Same one he stole earlier this week, Naruto said quickly, gesturing over to his right. Smells just like oaks and pine. On it, said Shikamaru, and his shadow quickly snaked around the cobblestones to latch onto their target, drawing the person toward them. Go check. How are you doing that? Naruto asked, scratching his head. I thought you could only make them imitate you. It is possible to control movements while you stay still, or freeze them in place while you move, using a variation called the shadow clutch, Shikamaru explained. It's just more difficult to use because it's extremely chakra intensive, and requires a lot of concentration. Technically I shouldn't be learning this until years later, but my mom made my dad start me early. It's not perfect yet, I can't get my shadow off the ground for very long, but I'm getting closer. It's all a matter of chakra reserves, and mine are still growing. It helps if I practice every once in a while. Oh, that's not sensei, Ino said suddenly, as their target was dragged into visual range. Naruto. Indeed, the person that Shikamaru had dragged towards them was actually a rather bewildered-looking young woman, and upon second glance, Naruto realized, extremely pretty, as in, even prettier than Sakura pretty, and judging from Ino's extremely jealous expression, prettier than Ino pretty, too. Yeah, that pretty. But there's that forest smell, Naruto protested eloquently as his mind started going all fuzzy. Well, maybe it's just perfume designed to imitate that smell. And Shikamaru, let go of her. You're scaring her. Ino hissed. Shikamaru, who was, Naruto realized, still staring blankly, snapped his hanging jaw shut and shook his head as if to clear it. Sorry, miss, he muttered, blushing. The lady blinked at them, and then, without a word, ran in the opposite direction, too terrified to even speak. They stared at her retreating form. Well. Shikamaru scratched the back of his neck. Ino slapped the backs of their heads. Seriously. Boys. Even our resident genius is now rendered incoherent, she sighed. Hey, I don't see you not becoming an unintelligible mess every time Sasuke-kun walks by. Shikamaru retorted, suddenly regaining his wits. And for your information, Sasuke-kun's different. Ino argued hotly. You don't even know her. And she's way older than all of us. You're not even 13 yet, whatever, Shikamaru sighed. The gong in the main square rang, signaling the start of the daimyo's festival. Hopefully we have enough to go off of when he comes back with the quiz. Holy crap, Naruto was still thinking, unable to even chase the words from his mind. She's even prettier than Sakura-chan, elsewhere. Oh, my cute students, Kakashi sighed, wiping the makeup off the scar over his eye. You three were so close. Chapter 7 Breaking Physics. Tanu. How many stalls were on the west side of the square? I closed my eyes, trying to remember the scene. 41, I answered. Good. Ino, this one's for you. What did man behind the counter in the lantern shop on Sugar Street look like? I held my breath, but perhaps that had been unnecessary. Ino had kept an eagle eye on lock for the whole trip, as she had been in the most danger of suffering from extra training sessions with Gai-sensei. Rather skinny middle-aged man, she answered immediately. Scruffyish graying but not fully white beard with sideburns and mustache. He always wears a green vest with stripes while the store is open. Noble hands and glasses. Kakashi-sensei smiled underneath his mask. Correct. Naruto, yes? What was the daimyo during this whole thing? Naruto worried his bottom lip. He had had the greatest advantage out of all of us, since his clones were able to observe the entire city from various angles. But that also translated to a disadvantage, since his memory was the worst out of the three of us, and the extra senses might have overloaded his brain. I didn't see him outside anywhere, so he was probably in his palace the entire time. Kakashi-sensei gave an approving nod. I guess I won't be able to abandon you guys to Gai-sensei for once. I never thought I'd be saying this early, but 3 for 3. You guys have exceeded my expectations. Whoa, really? Naruto interjected. Kakashi-sensei cocked an eyebrow at him. I mean, yeah, I knew that. And I totally didn't guess on anything. Ino breathed a sigh of relief. This had been the first time we had gotten all of the questions right without any mistakes. Then again, he had been relatively nice in his questions. Everything he gave us was limited to areas we had already seen. The last few times he had played this game with us while in Konoha, he had asked us about designs of the taps in certain bars in the less savory part of town. That we were too young to go into them didn't matter to him, since the counters of all the bars built in Konoha apparently looked the same, which we supposedly would have known if had we read the building codes inside the library. And since the library was an open-source reference building to people of all ages, all the information in it was also therefore completely fair game by his twisted logic. Of course, we had protested that building codes weren't exactly things shinobi should waste time looking up, but that had only led to him retorting that shinobi should always be highly aware of their own surroundings, which included architecture. Still, today was an achievement to be remembered. Winning at one of his games, finishing certain milestones, and so on, I always felt this compulsion not to disappoint him. Kakashi-sensei was unpredictable, wild, and incorrigible, but he was also our sensei and we had to respect him on some level. There was no denying that the stunts he pulled were all so subtly effective that you actually ended up being surprised at yourself. If I didn't have Naruto and Ino as base comparisons from a third-person perspective, I never would have even realized how far I had progressed under his terribly successful teaching style. The road back to Suna was about as peaceful as the away trip, except for a short dispute with a few young and inexperienced highwaymen whom we easily disposed of. Once again, we were reminded of how different the shinobi life was from the rest of the world. The robbers had been easy work, they weren't particularly skilled in any sort of combat, but had we not been there, they could very well have been lethal to Mr. Gyoza, even if he had hired regular, non-shinobi bodyguards. Things we took for granted, like someone of Ino's size sending a fully grown man flying backwards 10 meters with nothing but a well-placed kick between the legs, were pretty horrifying to both our clients and victims. Our main problem, rather, came when we finally got to the front gate. Evidently, the central administration in Suna had learned from the last 2 times Kakashi-sensei had duped their gate guards, because the people manning the shift this time were a bunch of kids like us, only more miserable looking. The older 2 just looked like they thought everyone younger than them were dirt, but the smallest one, especially, seemed rather unstable, but not in the same way Kakashi-sensei was. Kakashi-sensei just caused trouble. This guy looked like he wouldn't hesitate to kill you if you looked at him wrong. Even without the dark rings around his eyes, he looked perpetually angry, not that it bothered Kakashi-sensei. "Hello there," they responded with a glare. "Entrance fee?" the girl demanded. Kakashi-sensei whistled and gave her a once-over. "Wow. What do they put in the water in Suna?" I raised my eyebrow at him, not that he bothered to notice. Still, this was a bit far, even for his standards. The girl was barely older than we were. And Kakashi-sensei, he was 26, wasn't he? He was a lot of things, including a pervert, judging by his reading material, but he wasn't a criminal. Was he? He was, after all, a jonin and former ANBU. Things that happened in ANBU stayed in ANBU, Ino's father had said. On second thought, maybe that line wasn't as off-limits to our sensei as we initially thought it was, either. Did this guy even have any boundaries? Clearly, the girl was not as romantically inclined as the last one, because she took a moment to glance around dubiously at the clearly waterless sand dunes around us before she finally understood what he was implying. "Entrance fee," she ground out, reaching for the massive metal fan on her back. "Is that real?" Kakashi-sensei suddenly asked the murderous-looking one, drawing circles in the air around his eye with his finger. He didn't respond. The girl stared at him like he was suicidal. Granted, he probably was, though of course I hadn't known it then. She quickly looked back and forth between Kakashi-sensei and the youngest kid, and I realized that she was actually scared of him. Meanwhile, the middle child, a boy who seemed to be slightly older than us, though it was hard to tell with all that purple face paint, cleared his throat. "Is he okay?" he asked us, gesturing at our sensei with his chin. He had lost his arrogant attitude, too morbidly fascinated by the mental anomaly dancing before him to bother with keeping up his mask. "Yeah, no," I answered. "Look, sensei, Gyoza-san just wants to go home, so if you could." Kakashi-sensei ignored me, and proceeded to produce a tray of fresh sushi. Faster than the eye could follow, one of them disappeared from the plate, and we could see him chewing underneath his mask. He held the tray up to the 3 Suna gate guards. "Want one?" he asked, mouth full. "Is that fresh sushi?" Ino asked. He nodded, and swallowed. Then another piece of sushi vanished. We hadn't even seen him pull down his mask. "Where'd out get that?" the boy in the middle asked, baffled. "Suna's a landlocked nation. There's no running water for miles. We're too far inland for fresh fish." Kakashi-sensei finished his second piece. From the ponds out in the desert, we all turned to look. As expected, there were no ponds. "What ponds?" the girl with the fan asked. "Those ones. Can't you see them?" "No," we shook our heads. "It's actually a very special brand of sushi. This fish is only caught from those ponds," Kakashi-sensei explained, one visible eye growing wide and gesturing wildly with his free hand. "You see, these ponds move further away from you every time you take a step closer, and it's only by running faster than the speed of light that you can get to catch up to them. I forgot what they're supposed to be called, though." "You mean the mirages?" The boy with the makeup asked. Yep. Those, Kakashi-sensei grinned, snapping his fingers. Another piece of sushi vanished. But going back to what I was asking before, what do they put in the water in Suna? Sir, I am 17, the girl with the fan said. Entrance fee. Now, wow. Me too. Kakashi-sensei grinned. Liar, Ino muttered. And you're already jonin? She asked skeptically. Has Konoha really lowered its standards so far that they'll let people like you become jonin? Actually, they raised the bar quite recently, Kakashi-sensei told her. When they tossed me this rank, I was 13. She blinked once, twice, and then jumped back with a look of shock, drawing her fan. Your Kakashi no Sharingan, she hissed. What do you want? What are you doing here? Did Kakashi-sensei really become jonin at 13? Naruto hissed out of the corner of his mouth. Or is he just messing with us all again? I think it's actually true. Ino whispered back. I got to sneak a peek at my dad's copy of his psych evaluation once, and it included all of his ranking information. Naruto shook his head. No wonder he's so messed up. I'm taking my cute little students on their first C rank, Kakashi-sensei said, jerking a thumb at the three of us and Gyoza-san. I'm certainly not here as a ruse to come into Suna to spy on the esteemed Kazekage. I'm also certainly not here to steal any important Kinjutsu scrolls, or assassinate any important Suna officials, or sabotage any negotiations you might be having with the daimyo of the Land of Wind, or kidnap any Jinchuriki. The three of them tensed. Guards! The girl suddenly yelled. Immediately, a swarm of masked Suna ANBU jumped down from the tops of the walls and seized Kakashi-sensei, the three of us, Gyoza-san, and all his luggage and goods. Sensei, what are you doing? Ino screamed. This is a client. ANBU-san, Naruto whispered. That guy right there is a Suna merchant. So, look, our sensei's kinda crazy, so, Gyoza-san? One of the Suna ANBU asked. Gyoza-san nodded, terrified out of his wits. The ANBU made some hand signs to his teammates. Take the merchant and his bags back to his home. You four, Konoha-nin, get out and stay out. Okay. Kakashi-sensei said cheerfully, somehow managing to give a lazy salute even with the scimitar against his throat. Let's go, my cute students. The ANBU released us and stalked back inside, all the while sending us nasty glares over their shoulders. We backed away slowly and then turned and started running. What was that for, sensei? Ino screeched as soon as we had cleared the Suna guard's hearing range. No need to panic like that, he said. Gyoza-san is now safe and sound back in his home with all his money and goods. We didn't have to carry anything. The mission is complete. We're completely unharmed. And to top it all off, we didn't even need to pay the entrance fee. The three of us groaned. The Hokage's office. Kakashi's first thought upon returning to Konoha was, if you thought that your first C rank was bad, kiddies, you should see what I have in store for you the next time around. Then his second one was, how I love freshness-preserving storage seals. He disposed of his empty sushi tray in the little trash can specifically meant for paper and recyclables beside the Hokage's desk. And speaking of the Hokage, Kakashi Hatake, why are you smiling so? The Sandaime growled. Kakashi turned his head. I'm sorry, did you say something? I don't have time for this, Hatake, the Sandaime growled, reaching for his pipe and a match. What is this I hear about threatening to steal the Jinchuriki of Sunagakure? You know we're treading on thin ice in negotiations with them already. If you don't have a good reason for this insanity, I will have to take disciplinary action, copying or not. Sandaime, Kakashi drawled coolly, you know I always have a method to my madness. Well? Let's hear it. The Sandaime leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. If you must know, firstly, Kakashi told him, I did not threaten to steal their Jinchuriki. In fact, I explicitly stated that I was not going to do such a thing. They asked me to state my purpose, and I told them that I was there with my minions, my cute little students, to drop off a client after the end of our first mission. I merely added for clarification that I was not there to spy on the Kazekage, steal their secret jutsu, assassinate their leaders, which ensured that they'd assume the opposite. The Sandaime roared. Not my fault they can't tell truth from lies, Kakashi shrugged. Are you really going to blame me for their incompetence? This was so unfair. His cute students had been allowed to collect their pay and leave hours ago. Okay, maybe not. In reality, they had only left about 15 seconds ago. But still, it already felt like he had been here for hours. You'd think a jonin who decided to take a pay cut from A ranks back down to C ranks, volunteering to teach a team of insolent genin, never mind that he was actually the most immature one out of all of them, without expecting any benefits in return, would get a little more slack. Seriously. C ranks were boring. He hadn't done them since he was 5 or 6, and during that period of time, he hadn't screwed up a single one. He couldn't believe they were blaming him for acting like a kid now to make up for lost time. No one can tell truth from lies when dealing with you, Hataki, the Sandaime sighed. And anyway, I know you told them the truth with the intention of provoking them, since I know you knew that they wouldn't believe you, even if you told the truth. Kakashi paused, trying to wrap his mind around that logic puzzle. I'm sorry, don't play dumb, Hataki. You're wasting my time. Why the hell did you provoke them? Kakashi sighed. You were the one who told me to observe them, sir. Observation implies involving a certain level of discretion, Hataki, the Hokage told him, and I was discreet. They never realized that I was observing them, and by the way, that doesn't mean I lied before, because I only specified that I wasn't spying on the Kazekage. They totally thought that I was up to something else, Kakashi defended himself. While they were wasting time holding their swords to my throat, I realized that they had about 10 ANBU alone guarding their front gate. Normally, they'd only have 1 or 2, like us. That means the other 8 or 9, who were supposed to be on other missions, are instead lounging around at home, taking up whatever jobs they can to make themselves useful. And if you compare this number to the amount of active duty ANBU that other intelligence seems to have gathered, assuming that it's correct, their unemployment rate and drop in missions seems to be much higher than 40%. Which only suggests that whatever they are planning might be arriving a great deal sooner than originally anticipated. The Hokage glared at him. And you couldn't have done that without causing a riot? Kakashi shrugged. I'm not a natural-born censor. From my position, I could only tell that there were a large amount of ANBU hiding behind the front gate, not how many there were. Superficially, I could only distinguish maybe 4 or 5 of them. By drawing them out, I was able to give you a much better answer. Besides, no one was in any real danger. I made sure we were positioned so that if anything went wrong, I'd be able to easily grab all the kids and run. Not to mention, we had a well-known merchant with us. So sorry, but not sorry. If you want my honest opinion, Hokage-sama, what I did today probably doesn't change their plans at all. They're already intending on executing some sort of large-scale sabotage as we know it. The Hokage took a long, deep drag on his pipe. And what do you think we should do, In all honesty? The best way to disable a trap is to spring it, Kakashi shrugged. Take that how you will. Though I'm pretty sure you and your advisors already came to the same conclusion long ago. The Sandaime glared at him, and then sighed and added more tobacco to his pipe. Hataki, yes sir, get out. I have to think. Does this mean I'm not in trouble anymore, Hokage-sama? Get out. Kakashi shrugged and sauntered out, quietly shutting the door behind him. Sheesh, he thought. I risk a scimitar to the neck to bring them important news, and this is the thanks I get. Suddenly, a thought occurred to him, and he reopened the door to the Hokage's office and poked his head inside. By the way, Hokage-sama, I'm pretty sure that one of the Kazekage's 3 kids is their current Jinchuriki. His oldest daughter's a wind ninjutsu type, the middle son is a puppeteer, and his youngest son likes to glare at things until they spontaneously combust. You get 3 guesses to figure out which one it is, and the first 2 don't count. Hataki. Kakashi winced and slammed the door shut just in time to intercept a very heavy flying vase. Training Ground 3. Well, I think I've melted your brains enough in the past week, so as a reward for all your hard work and your first successful C rank, I'll make today a ninjutsu day. How does that sound? Yes, Ino cried. Yes, please, thank the Lord. Ninjutsu day was always good news. It was the one day Kakashi-sensei was actually entirely truthful with us. Sure, it would be just as exhausting as any normal day or training, but at least there were none of his weird mind games involved. Nature transformation in and of itself was a tricky business, even more so in the hands of genin. Kakashi-sensei was crazy, but he wasn't stupid. He wouldn't deliberately mislead us when we had something as dangerous as half-formed elemental chakra in our hands. After all that he had done, he hadn't put our lives in danger. Yet, after all the time we had been together, we still knew very little about Kakashi-sensei. From the rare glimpses we had managed to catch of him interacting with other people in the village, we had determined that his social skills were malformed at best, and non-existent at worst. But every once in a while, our pure ninjutsu days reassured us that our sensei really was a human being and not some mentally deranged ghost. Kakashi-sensei had claimed, on our first meeting, that he had some likes and dislikes, which, we had found out later, was actually much more than most people ever got. General consensus seemed to refer to Kakashi Hataki as this great, expressionless enigma, and the fact that he had personal preferences about certain things, just like normal people did, was as much of a surprise to anyone as it was to us. In any event, one of those likes had been elemental ninjutsu. He had plenty of talent in both genjutsu and taijutsu, but the way he trained us in ninjutsu clearly showed that it was his favorite discipline by far. He revered ninjutsu, just as much as Mato Guy and Rock Lee revered taijutsu, or the girls of our graduating class revered Sasuke Uchiha. And though Ino and I both had non-elemental clan techniques, and Naruto was, well, Naruto, his enthusiasm was infectious all the same. With his flippant attitude toward nearly everything in life, finding just one thing that he actually cared about was an achievement in itself. You just didn't have someone like Kakashi Hatake as a teacher and not walk away knowing at least something about elemental manipulation. Just because I know a lot of big flashy A-rank techniques doesn't always mean that they're the ones you should use, he had told us. Often the easy, simple ones are the most effective. The Headhunter Jutsu was one of the first earth types I learned, and it hasn't failed me yet. The Great Fireball Jutsu is impressive, but a well-aimed flash jet to the face or the chest is just as deadly and harder to see. Used in tandem with a proper wind technique, and you can level a whole forest with minimal effort on your part. The Academy hadn't given us much detail beyond general theory about elemental ninjutsu, and for very good reason. The first time Naruto had attempted a simple wind technique, it had gone wonky and decimated 3 trees. Even now, when he had been practicing the air blade and other chakra control exercises for months, his aim was still quite mediocre. Learning the cage main had forced me to perfect my aim, and Ino had good control as always, but damn if Naruto couldn't take out a whole squadron of ANBU all by himself, and by accident, too. But hey, this gave me something to work on, at least. There was only so much map reading we could do in the library. My father had a job outside of playing strategy games with me, and I could only deal with Kakashi-sensei's special version of chess for so long. Maybe that was why he always claimed to be so poor despite having enough money to happily indulge in Naruto's ramen addiction every once in a while. All of his wages were spent on replacing his destroyed chess boards, since apparently the fact that the wood deformed when kunai were thrown at them was a novel revelation. And since doing nothing really did not suit me well, ninjutsu was a great way to pass my time in between missions. The Nara clan compound. Did you have fun at training today? My mother asked me as I walked through the door. As fun as it could ever be with a sensei like mine, I grinned. It was ninjutsu day today. Pure, untampered ninjutsu. My mother nodded sympathetically. Both my parents were very familiar with Kakashi-sensei's rather odd way of doing things, to put it lightly. It was a good thing that I had inherited my father's patience and my mother's work ethic, rather than the other way around. Your father's waiting for you out by the fire pit, my mother told me. The sun's going down. I raised an eyebrow in confusion. In the past, that had meant that I was ready to undergo the next stage of cage main training, but I had since mastered all of the known forms, as far as my current chakra reserves would permit, already. My father was poking at the embers with a stick when I got there. It was always interesting to practice the cage main around an open flame. The way shadows reacted to the constant motion of dim light was incomprehensible to anyone who hadn't spent many sleepless nights observing them as my father and I had. Tell me, Shikamaru, how long does your shadow last against a struggling opponent? I had tested this with Naruto, Ino, and Kakashi-sensei before. With the target actually trying to escape? It ranges from about 10 minutes to 20. 10 minutes, because Kakashi-sensei knew how to actively cycle his chakra opposite to his natural flow so that it took me extra power to counteract it, and the extra time because neither Naruto nor Ino had the same skill he did. Ino was close, but her reserves were just as paltry as mine, and if you control them so that their movements are not mirroring yours, around 8.5 minutes against my sensei, and maybe 12 to 15 minutes against my teammates, I told him. Both of those values weren't too bad, really. It took much less than a second to kill someone, theoretically. I had never done it before, though I was aware that one day I would have to, and all at once, maybe subtract 1 to 2 minutes from each. It depends on how many people I'm trying to bind at once. My father nodded. Good. Good. He was muttering more to himself than to me. Very good, for someone your age. He poked at the embers a bit more. Tell me, Shikamaru, why do you think the cage main is so difficult to use successfully? The simplest answer was that it was limited by the sun, and since I was not at my full height yet body size. However, I had figured out how to get around that a long time ago simply through brute force practice. An infinitely fine thread, so thin it was impossible to see, could stretch to almost unlimited lengths even at noon. Of course, even this had its downsides, which was why I worked hard on elemental ninjutsu. 2. It's a massive chakra drain, I answered. And why do you think it is so much more difficult than, say, the mind transfer jutsu of the Yamanaka? I had thought about this question before. I'm guessing it's because the target retains control of their own self-will, and is actively trying to get away as the binding takes place. Perhaps my father had come up with a much better solution than mine? My father nodded. Now tell me, how much easier do you think it would be if the movement of your shadow is not restricted to your position? And how easier would it be still if self-will could also be overridden? I raised an eyebrow. Is that even possible? You tell me. How come I've never heard of this? My father chuckled. You're only the second. I frowned. Then you. If you had been born as lazy as I was, Shikamaru, then maybe I would have been content to sit around watching clouds all day. But how can I lie back and do nothing, when both my wife and my own son work so hard? The shadows shifted again. I might be aging, but I'm not that old yet. As the head of the Nara clan, I should be expected to contribute to our technique repertoire. There is still time to discover, Shikamaru. The sun is setting. Chapter 8. Letters and Detours. The Nara clan compound. Dad, I asked, how long have you been working on this? I've been toying around with the idea for a while now. I didn't start researching the technique in earnest until after you were born. Is it safe? I asked. Safe? No. Definitely not, my father told me. But you are as ready as you will ever be for this technique, Shikamaru. There will come a time when I will no longer be able to protect you, and when that time comes it will fall upon you to defend yourself. And I trust you. Logically, those words just sounded like any other reassurance from father to son. All parents wanted to shield their children from the world. Only, my father seemed more grave than usual tonight, as if the dangers he mentioned were something very close and real and tangible instead of just the general things like war and hunger and spiders, as if there was something specifically targeting me, something that I didn't know about. I made no comment. Now, the first thing you must know is, when you practice this modified version of the cage main, you may not work for any longer than 5 minutes in one given sitting. Secondly, you may not practice any more than once every 24-hour period regardless of whether your one sitting took the full 5 minutes, or only 1 second. When you are going to go practice, you will tell me and I will supervise you for the entire duration of the technique. Even after you have mastered it enough that I have cleared you for its usage out in the field, you must use it sparingly and cautiously. Is that understood? Yes, sir. Then, let us begin. Day 1. Do not, under any circumstances, confuse this for the Yamanaka mind transfer jutsu. That technique is completely safe to those who know how to use it. But even after 10 years, the separation of your own consciousness is never a pleasant feeling. If you are careless, you will get lost. Dad, what? The Yamanaka techniques are very delicate and leave no imprint. A visitor borrowing control for a while, if you will. This form of the shadow possession, on the other hand, may theoretically last for as long as you like, because it does not require chakra to maintain. Once it makes contact with the target, it is a completely unrestricted mental takeover. Shikamaru, do you know what happens during a complete and unrestricted mental takeover? No? Why do they die? My father smiled grimly. Technically, the heart can still beat, even when the conscious part of the brain has shut down. I frowned. How do you know? Who did you practice all of this on? You're a smart boy, Shikamaru. You should know that Konoha is not all smiles and rainbows like we lead others to believe. I decided not to contest his non-answer. Given the restrictions you placed on this technique, aren't there more efficient and safe ways to, well, achieve the same purpose? I'm pretty sure a medic knows how to put someone in a permanent coma without all of that. My father smiled ruefully. There are terrible things in this world that you haven't seen yet, son. Terrible things that die but don't, effing, stay dead, but never mind that. He reached into a sack behind him and pulled out a rabbit, still trapped in its snare. You will start with this. Concentrate on the physical target, and then, instead of reaching out with your shadow, carve it into 2 pieces, and move the separate component across the ground without moving the main piece still attached to your body. What now? You probably won't get it right away. How is that supposed to work? I asked, staring skeptically at my body, which was still, as far as I was concerned, in one piece. Personally, I find it helpful to practice shaping it into an hourglass figure first, and then figuring out how to sever that last thread later. I had played around with my shadow many times before, bending it to make shapes on the wall, deer and boats and trees and such when my own hands were not flexible enough to create such a detailed shadow puppet. An hourglass was child's play to me. But cutting that last connection, I don't quite remember when I blacked out, but when my alarm clock rang this morning I felt as if I hadn't slept at all. Training Gown 3. Hello, my cute students. Will you stop calling us that? Naruto whined. We're shinobi. We're not supposed to be cute. So cute, Kakashi thought to himself. We have yet another C rank. It seemed as if they had been assigned to nothing but C ranks for the past 5 months. Probably because the front desk kept getting complaints whenever Team 7 was given a D rank. Unlike most bad reviews, however, these ones were directed at the Jonin instructor, and not the genin. Kakashi snickered behind his mask. I don't suppose we can go back to chasing Tora? Ino muttered. We are going to deliver mail. Kakashi cheerfully ignored her. Shikamaru's eyes were slowly drooping shut and snapping open again. Not good. What's the catch? Naruto asked warily. They're learning. Just a few months ago they would have gone. That's not too bad. Our career mission is actually very important. These messages are instructions going to our military outposts on High no Kuni's northern border. Now I know you three managed to not screw up the few letter delivery missions in Konoha that we've had, but the area was a very well-confined one that you were all familiar with. Here, we'll be out on the open road, without any proper pavement or direction signs. These letters must get to the right people, and they cannot be late. I don't suppose I'll need to explain to you that they cannot be intercepted or seen by anyone other than our own, either. Let me guess, map time? Ino asked. He had actually been about to train them in tree travel. Or rather, how to tree travel faster, since in Konoha everyone and their mother knew what a tree was. But a second look at Shikamaru made him decide that maybe having massive nindogs nipping at their heels as they jumped through branches several meters off the ground was not the safest thing to do right now. He really needed to give Shikamaru a talk about the difference between physically and mentally showing up for duty. Not now, though. It would all go in one ear and out the other. Yes. Map time. He grinned. Is that it? Naruto asked, also glancing at the completely silent Shikamaru. Should he or should he not? Making them angry was just so fun, and he had already been nice to them yesterday, what with ninjutsu time and all. Oh well, yes. That's it, he told them. This mission is actually important. They all nodded and headed off. Kakashi himself decided to head off to ANBU headquarters to visit Ibiki. Though he wasn't formally allowed in there anymore, that didn't mean he couldn't loiter around the front just to screw with the minds of the new recruits. It was something Ibiki always approved of. He hadn't messed with his team today, so someone else would have to pick up the slack. It was only fair. The Konoha Public Library. Oh no, Ino muttered to herself. It's him again. She tried her best to hide behind the map that she had been looking at before Lee came barging in, but to no avail. Lee seemed to have some sort of magical mental radar that was unfortunately focused on only her, much like Mato Gai's magical mental honing device for Kakashi-sensei, and nothing she did could shake him off. They were currently supposed to be doing research in preparation for their next C rank. That particular lesson had been learned the hard way once and only once. Never go into a mission unprepared if your team leader is someone like Kakashi Hatake. And Kakashi-sensei's definition of unprepared was basically anything short of ready for everything that could possibly happen, even if it's impossible. Considering that it was Kakashi-sensei they were referring to, the impossible was time and time again proven to be very well within the realm of possible. Which was why she was here with Shikamaru and Naruto now, finding out everything they could about their future mission. Or at least, she and Naruto were. Shikamaru, who was normally so alert, was currently in this state of half-awareness. She had known Shikamaru long enough to realize that it would be one of those days again. Obviously he had stayed up training with his father all of last night. He'd be completely useless for the next few hours, Ino knew, but of course she let Shikamaru tag along to the library anyway, just to give him the illusion of being useful. Shikamaru was the type to always feel bad when other people worked and he didn't, even if his rest was well-deserved. This was probably why Kakashi-sensei had deemed today to be pre-mission research day, too. Instead of the normally grueling training he put them through. She still hadn't forgiven that man for ruining her favorite outfit, by the way. Apparently, while the mission itself was simple enough, the story behind it was anything but. It had taken her hours to coax the whole thing out of her father, and even after that it had taken him hours to tell it. Not too long ago, a team of Konoha Chunin had been assigned to a standard C rank to escort a bridge builder named Tazuna back to his home in the Land of Waves. However, shortly after they had departed, they had been attacked by the Demon Brothers, two missing men from the Hidden Mist. While the Chunin team had luckily managed to fend off their assailants without any casualties, it had raised some interesting questions, such as why the missing men were even after the man in the first place, when C-rank escort missions only detailed help against standard untrained bandits and thieves. It turned out Tazuna had lied about the mission parameters because Wave was an impoverished nation despite their economically and militarily strategic location, all of which had opened up yet another can of worms involving Gato, a crime lord that had taken over the place some years before. The reason why Gato wanted him dead was because Tazuna was trying to build a bridge to the mainland, which would strip Gato of his monopoly over the island nation. Unfortunately, however, the government of Konoha hadn't particularly cared about the lives of the citizens of Wave as much as they cared about the well-being of their own citizens. In this case, the squad of Chunin whose lives Tazuna had endangered because of his lies. Following that, Tazuna had been temporarily imprisoned while administration figured out what to do about Gato and Wave, since having Missing Knee knowingly housed so close to the coast of Hai no Kuni was unacceptable to the Hidden Leaf. The Land of Fire could have easily destroyed Gato before, had they wished it. They certainly had the wealth and military power to do so, but up until such an insult it hadn't been worth the effort. All Ino could say to that was, "What an idiot." It was one thing to beat up a bunch of defenseless fishermen, it was another to directly challenge one of the great elemental nations and their trained ninja village. Whether Gato seriously was intending to take on Konohagakure no Sato, or whether he was just being too arrogant and greedy for his own good, didn't change the fact that he had given foreign criminals asylum in what was basically the backyard pool of Hai no Kuni. It hadn't ended there, though. The Demon Brothers weren't the only missing name Gato had hired. If he had just stopped at 2 Chunin, perhaps he would have gotten away with it. But word was it that Zabuza Momochi, a former swordsman of the Hidden Mist, was somehow involved as well. Zabuza Momochi had been supposed to kill Tazuna, should the Demon Brothers fail. Unfortunately, that was impossible now, since murdering Tazuna meant infiltrating the prisons of another major hidden village, one which had his name in their bingo books. Ironically, prison was the safest place for Tazuna, right now. Prisons and fortresses, both were equally good at keeping people out as well as in. It was a little iffy about what had happened after that, but from what Ino had managed to wheedle out of her father, Gato had refused to pay Zabuza for all of his services up until that point, just because he had been unable to fulfill this last task. Zabuza, since he no longer had a hidden village to back him up, subsequently murdered Gato and all of his thugs, stole even more money than what he had been due, and left. So now there was this massive power vacuum in Wave Country. Though the people were poor, the land itself was still very rich and highly profitable, both for trade and military reasons. Kirigakure was still too messed up from its highly long and bloody civil war to stake any claim on this place, but Kumo, having been a highly stable military and economic power for quite some time, was not. It was, of course, impossible for Konoha to just stand back and watch this take place, since Wave was now technically under control of Hai no Kuni, the geographically closest major nation to it. To allow a rival village to take control of Wave was disastrous, which meant that Konoha would have to return Tazuna back to Wave, install him as some sort of puppet leader before things got too out of hand, all the while delaying the forces from Cloud until the entire administrative mess had been sorted out. And so that trickled down to little three-man cells like theirs, whose jobs varied from cleaning up the mess Gato and his men had left in Wave, to building the bridge to the mainland for easier access for troops, to keeping watch on the forces from lightning. In the end, everything worked out for Tazuna, who got his guard mission and his bridge done for free, just because he lied and got caught, all of which paled in comparison to the thing dancing in front of her face right now. How was she supposed to concentrate on tracing out the most efficient path between message outposts on Konoha's northern borders when this guy was chasing her all over the place and yelling in her ear, "My beautiful Aino-chan, this is a library, young man." The woman behind the counter hissed angrily, "I am so sorry. I will try my best to be quieter. And if I cannot be quieter, then I shall run 100 laps around Konoha. On my hands, while juggling kunai with my feet. Help me," she mouthed to Naruto, who shrugged apologetically. Ino looked helplessly at Shikamaru. His eyes were glazed over, and he didn't even look like he'd be awake for any longer. Nope. This was going to be her fight and hers alone. Lee? I'm really flattered that you think of me in this way, but, my beautiful Aino-chan, we shall be together forever and always. Out of the corner of her eye, through a gap in the books on the shelf at her side, Ino suddenly saw Sakura passing through the doors. This was not good. If Sakura saw something like this, she'd never hear the end of it. She had to get rid of Lee somehow, and quickly. God, this was so embarrassing. She'd rather die than let Sakura find out about something like this, and we shall engage in the most youthful of youthful activities to declare our eternal and undying love. Ino winced. Did Lee not just understand the implications of what he just said? You didn't say stuff like that in public. No! Ino hissed. Lee stopped mid-rant. What? I said no, Ino said more firmly, putting her hands on her hips. Lee was crestfallen. But why? His eyes started to water. Oh God, poor guy, if only, no! Snap out of it, Ino. This is your future we're thinking of. Lee can always find someone else. Not that Lee wasn't a good, kind, hard-working person, there were far worse people in the world, but seriously. She had to draw the line at stalkerish behavior. This was sexual harassment, for God's sake, though she doubtedly even knew what sex even was. Listen, Lee. You and Guy-sensei really get along, don't you? Ino asked him. Yosh. Guy-sensei is the greatest ninja to have ever lived. Lee boomed. This is a library. The lady behind the desk hissed. That's where you're wrong, Ino told him, a Shikamaru-worthy plan forming in her mind. Because Kakashi-sensei is the greatest ninja to have ever lived. Not Guy-sensei. Behind her, Naruto snorted into his books. She turned back to glare at them. You could make yourself useful, you know, she snapped out of the corner of her mouth. Sorry, Naruto whispered, and went back to his book, still snickering. Lee, meanwhile, was looking at her as if she had just said the most blasphemous thing he had ever heard. Actually, come to think of it, that probably was the most blasphemous thing he had ever heard. No. No, Ino-chan, you can't. Lee, I hate to break it to you, but we can never be together. You are Guy-sensei's esteemed disciple. On the other hand, I am Kakashi-sensei's esteemed disciple. Guy-sensei and Kakashi-sensei are eternal rivals. Therefore, you and I are also doomed to be eternal rivals, Lee gasped in realization. Utterly crushed, he fell to his hands and knees, and howled his anguish to the heavens. Nuh, that's it! The lady behind the desk screeched. Out! Oh, out! And then suddenly there was an evil little spark of mischief bursting in the back of Ino's mind. She didn't know where it came from or why it was there, though she suspected Kakashi-sensei had had something to do with it. All she knew was that her inner devil was there to stay, and that there was absolutely no way she could not listen to it, now that it had already started giving her brilliantly dastardly ideas. I'm so sorry, Lee, she said, feigning heartbreak, but please don't let this bring you down forever. There are probably lots of other beautiful and strong girls out there, just like me, but you are the only one for me, Ino-chan. Lee looked up, his face stained with tears. Not quite, she said. For example, Sakura-chan over there is a very good friend of mine, and she is just as beautiful and strong. Not really. I hate her. I really do. Kind of. I haven't seen her in a while. I miss her. I wonder how she's doing. Not that I care. Because I hate her. Why don't you go over and talk to her? See what you have in common. Her teacher is Kurenai-sensei, I think, so you won't have to deal with the whole eternal rival thing as a barrier. Yosh, Lee said sadly, standing up and brushing off his jumpsuit. He began to walk away, but not before he turned around and said, I shall do as you say. Though I do not think it will help my broken heart any. Eternal rivals or not, you are still the world to me. Our star-crossed love shall prevail. Ino and Naruto both winced as they watched him leave their corner of the library. It wasn't until Lee was finally gone that Ino finally smirked and sat back down to trace out possible routes on their maps again. She felt someone staring at her, so she looked up. Naruto was staring at her, his jaw slack. What? She snapped defensively. Did you just… Naruto trailed off, unable to form any coherent sentences. Did I just what? Ino asked him, putting her hands on her hips. Did you just set Rock Lee on Sakura? He whispered. I knew you two were rivals, but I didn't realize you hated her that much. I don't hate her that much, Ino told him. She'll be fine, Yosh. My beautiful young Kunoichi. Are you the famous Sakura-chan that the world speaks so highly of? Oh my sun and stars, come hither, and we shall forever be joined in fate, never to be parted. Yee. Get away from me, you creep. Maybe, Ino finished sheepishly. Better her than me, right? Yes, Kakashi-sensei was a very, very bad influence. But she didn't care, not one bit. Kakashi whistled to himself as he walked home. The reactions of the new recruits had been very good. Most people hesitated to deal with an insane stranger. Today's guards, however, had taken him seriously, even though he was a known Konoha-nin. That was good. It meant that A and B was up to par in terms of recognizing duplicity. The old-timers were always complaining about how their forces were going soft just because children were allowed to hit puberty before being exposed to all of the irreversible war-induced trauma of the past now. Well, this should satisfy them. Then again, it could very well mean that ANBU was used to dealing with people like him now. It was at that point that Guy's non-genetic offspring passed him with the usual gusto. He seemed very busy chasing something very pink and definitely not Ino. And then his brain caught up to his eyes and realized that Rock Lee was chasing something that was definitely not Ino, which could only mean one thing: someone else had caught his otherwise unshakably loyal attention. Oh, Ino, Kakashi thought, I am so proud of you. 1 week later, thankfully, during the course of their career mission, Kakashi-sensei had not wasted very much time taking them on weird detours and stuff, and he hadn't challenged any of the outpost guards to one of his trippy verbal spars even once. Really, the only Kakashi-sensei-like thing Kakashi-sensei had done was summon his nin dogs and have them chase their team for the duration of the trip so that they'd run faster. Ino had screamed and complained a bit, but compared to the other things Kakashi-sensei had made them do in the past, this really wasn't at all that bad. Besides, the dogs were sorta cute. Most animals didn't like Naruto much for some reason, but Kakashi's nin dogs always let him pet them after the chase was over, for which Naruto was very glad. He couldn't tell what Kakashi-sensei was thinking half the time, and it was really annoying, even though he was now a lot better at telling the difference between Kakashi-sensei joking and actually being serious about them doing the crazy stuff that he considered to be actually very necessary. He still wasn't as good as Shikamaru or Ino. Shikamaru had told him that the reason why Kakashi-sensei was taking this seriously for once was because the situation was actually serious, which Naruto guessed made sense. The Cloud Ninjas were getting really restless because of the whole situation in Wave, and meanwhile the finances of Sand were reportedly only getting worse. If push came to shove, any ninja village was a force to be reckoned with, and Konoha couldn't fight a two-front war, not if the Earth Ninjas decided to take advantage of the situation and turn the two-front war into a three-front one, just to get revenge for their loss in the Third Shinobi World War all those years ago. At least, that was what Shikamaru had told him. All this politics stuff was so confusing. Naruto didn't know how Shikamaru came up with all that stuff out of the blue all by himself. It made sense, though, after he explained it. As long as Kakashi-sensei acted normalish during the mission. Of course, going home was an entirely different story. Kakashi-sensei? Naruto asked. This isn't the right direction. If there was one book-related thing he knew how to do, it was read maps, and this definitely wasn't south. I know, Kakashi-sensei said. We're taking a detour. See, after all that hard work you kids did, I thought I'd take you guys on a vacation. A nice, long vacation. Oh. Vacation, for Kakashi-sensei, was never a good thing. And out here, with no one to give them strange looks or to call Kakashi-sensei out on his weirdness, it would be even crazier. That guy took the meaning of a working holiday way too literally. Sensei, we're supposed to be back in Konoha by tomorrow, Ino pointed out. If we go this way, we'll be late by a whole day. 2 maybe, if whatever you're planning will take even more time than that. Well then, you better run fast if you don't want to be late, right? Kakashi-sensei asked. Sensei, that's not fair, Naruto protested. They'll send people out to look for us. And when we finally get back and they realize it was all just a waste of time, they'll put a bad mark on our record. I already have enough bad marks as it is. Oh, it's all right, Naruto. I'm your team leader. I'll take responsibility for the tardiness if they nitpick. I already sent them a note. Besides, I'm always late. We'll be fine. Several hours later, Ino was asking, so, where are we going? Southeast. We're going southeast. Konoha is southwest of here, Shikamaru muttered mostly to himself. What could be southeast of here? There's wave country, but we're not involved there. The situation is too dangerous for Genin. Where the hell are we going? Kakashi-sensei's only answer to both those questions had been, you'll see. It'll be great, which was sort of true, when they finally got there the next day. The place really was beautiful, with pools of clear, clean water everywhere. Of course, since this was Kakashi-sensei, that only heightened their paranoia. What are you waiting for? Jump right in. The water's amazing, Kakashi-sensei told them, walking out on the surface of the lake. Well, the three of them stood resolutely on shore. Look, we'll have to get to that patch of land for our training sooner or later, said Kakashi-sensei, pointing off to a tiny island-like structure way in the distance. So you guys better get moving fast. You don't want to be stuck walking across the water after the sun has already gone down. But that looks really far, Ino whispered. All the better to improve your endurance with. Let's go, Kakashi-sensei clapped his hands. Naruto groaned, but took a few steps out anyway, and then nearly drowned when he felt something drag him under. If Kakashi-sensei hadn't caught him in time. What the heck is it with the currents in this place? Naruto yelled. This is crazy, and Naruto, you need to practice chakra control, too, so we're really helping all three of you in one go. Come on, but they're whirlpools, Shikamaru suddenly realized. This entire place is full of whirlpools. Sensei. You've taken us to the ruins of Uzushiogakure, HM? Did I? Kakashi-sensei asked, and suddenly, his little smiles and tricks no longer seemed so pointless or stupid. So it seems like I have. Come on, my cute little Konoha genin. You can't go through life without knowing what the bright red target signs on the backs of our flak jackets truly mean. Chapter 9. The Ruins of Uzushiogakure. Konoha. Considering that he had grown up with people like Choza and Shikaka for friends, Inoichi had gotten used to an exasperating level of calmness. As in, Shikaka was the type to roll over and go back to sleep even under heavy artillery bombardment because from my calculations, they don't have the firepower to reach any of our positions, and Choza was the type to agree with Shikaka just because doing so conserved the most calories. But he, like his daughter, also knew that appearances could be deceiving. Being a Yamanaka meant that you were more in tune with the emotions of others, and being a trained interrogator in the upper echelons of ANBU meant that you could distinguish between all sorts of faces. And, having known Shikaka for nearly his entire life, Inoichi would be embarrassed if he couldn't distinguish between the man's many shades of apathy. There was a huge difference between my face is blank because I'm being lazy, leave me alone, and my face is blank because my brain has shut down. Please help me, and my face is blank because I am about to engage in some extremely dangerous and perhaps treasonous behavior that must remain a secret no matter what. Please keep this secret because I trust you, Shikaka. Talk to me. His old friend rolled over and looked him in the eye. What is there to say? Soon enough, our war will become our children's. It has already started, has it? Inoichi asked. It has, Shikaka confirmed. He was back yesterday, you know. I had been hoping that the truce we had established 6 years ago would have lasted just a little longer, and on the surface, the two of us are still pretending to ignore each other, but of course you already know the truth. He's going to be moving back out in the open again soon enough. Inoichi did already know the truth. He had known the truth since 10 years ago, when Fu had been taken from him. And he had been keeping track of every single little detail of that truth since then. This new development, however, was highly troubling. Inoichi would have to step up his game. As did Ibiki, and Shibi Aburame. I take it you've started Shikamaru on that technique, then, Inoichi said. I regret nothing, Shikaka responded, more to convince himself than to convince Inoichi. It was necessary. It had to be done. So I did engage in some nasty bits of work, getting to this point, but still, it was necessary. If I had disagreed with you I wouldn't have helped you, Inoichi reassured him. Shikaka seemed to find the ground very interesting. I thank you for that. The two of them shared in the silence for a while. I wish you would just die already, Inoichi muttered. It was a hopeless wish. Danzo Shimura had a lot of backup plans up his sleeves, and it would be foolhardy to strike so rashly. Especially when, at this point in time, the man's death would most likely cause more problems than those he created while he still lived. I think that's something a lot of people wish, Shikaka said, standing up. A little easier said than done, though. And he was correct again, as usual. Right now, they were both in a less than optimal situation. Danzo Shimura simply had better starting positions and better resources, not to mention the first move in this silent war, and every second they wasted was every second he had to shore up his defenses. Inoichi had trusted Shikaka to be able to stand up to him then, the first time Shikamaru had been targeted, and he still trusted Shikaka to be able to stand up to him now. But the fact that they were currently in such a disadvantageous situation compared to a man like that was very worrisome. He could no longer sit around waiting for anyone else to make a move. They had to strike now while they still had a chance. Well, it can't be just wishful thinking anymore, Inoichi pointed out. We, the both of us, are already too far involved in this. He has to die. Or it'll be us. And then where will Shikamaru be? Where will Ino be? He's winning, Shikaku, if you hadn't realized. He has more power, influence, and soldiers than any of us. At this, Shikaku's face adopted an odd little look. One that was halfway between a smile and not. That is true. He is winning right now. Then Shikaku inhaled, and took a long sip of his tea. But I play the long game, Inoichi. Uzushiogakure. Even Naruto was deadbeat tired by the time they had made it across the water to the shores of the ruins. But Kakashi was so proud of them. The crossing had taken approximately 3 hours, and during that whole time not a single one of his genin had given up partway. The fact that they would have been sucked under by the whirlpools if they even made one false step might have had something to do with it. "Sensei, please, can't we have just a tiny break?" Ino gasped from the sand. Kakashi, of course, was completely fine. Kind of. He was a little bit tired himself. Last time he had done this, he hadn't even broken a sweat. Of course, he had been at the peak of his ANBU training then, and the weight of his armor had been just a fraction of the mass of the big bulky flak jacket the standard forces wore. Also, he had been busy keeping up a safety net of chakra underneath his students' feet the entire time, just in case one of them really did exhaust themselves and fall through. He wasn't stupid, accidents happen all the time, and while he was good at gauging both his comrades' and enemies' skill levels, it wasn't enough to justify putting his students in actual danger. But he judged himself just as hard as he judged others, and right now he was going to give himself the verdict that he was rather out of shape, even for someone who was training like a normal person and not like, well, the freak that he had been in ANBU. Going from A ranks and S ranks to D ranks and C ranks tended to do that to a person. Sure. Why don't you guys sit down here, and I'll give you all a little history lesson, Kakashi smiled, to Naruto's great dismay. That's not a break, he protested. Shut up, Ino snapped. It's better than nothing, and besides, history lectures are very long. And you know what we'll be doing the whole time? Sitting down. Naruto was actually quiet after that. Now settle down, my cute students, Kakashi said, even though they really didn't need any actual settling down. He had, after all, just led them on a 3-hour run straight across a great body of violently agitated water, right after an entire day of land travel at top speed. This is actually a very important story, and I don't mind you lying down as long as you actually listen and don't fall asleep. They all immediately understood that that meant we will be having a quiz on this tomorrow, so pay attention, something which he really was so proud of them for. They had only been dealing with him for a few months. It had taken his ANBU team almost a year to stop falling for his tricks and lies. The sun was setting now, casting an entire palette of oranges and pinks across the deceptively calm waters of Whirlpool Country. The only hints to the turbulent currents running below the surface were a few minuscule tremors dotted here and there. Had he been a less observant man, he might have called it beautiful. Perfect even, but Kakashi had been trained to look underneath the underneath ever since he could walk. The world was always at war, even while under the illusion of peace. Looking back over at his 3 students, who were lying on the sand like a pile of beached marine invertebrates, Kakashi smiled to himself. He'd be nice just this once and collect the wood for their campfire instead of making them do it. Then he decided to do another good deed, and lit the fire himself instead of forcing Ino to practice her fire jutsu. They'd be training even more the next morning, and they needed all the recuperation time they could get. He was considering giving them more time on genjutsu, actually. Just to give Ino a break. She looked exhausted. See, he could be kind when he wanted to. He just didn't do it very often. Oh well. Baby steps, he supposed. It was kind of like quitting smoking, except Asuma probably never would. Being mean had become a bit of a bad habit for him. Why, just the other day, some random angry desk Chunin had screamed in his face, just because you're Kakashi Hatake, doesn't mean you have the right to behave like a total asshole, while waving a copy of his last terrible mission report in his face. For other people, it might have been cause for some self-reflection. But for Kakashi, he just couldn't bring himself to care. The knowledge that he was a horrible person was nothing new to him, and so he might as well milk it for all it was worth, not that it helped him much. No matter what he did, Asuma, or Kurenai, or Guy, or Genma and Aoba and all of them never left him. Oh sure, they got angry at him sometimes. Kakashi would consider himself a massive failure if he couldn't accomplish that at the very least. But none of them had the self-preservation to distance themselves from him. He wasn't so socially inept that he didn't know the difference between exasperation and hate. Guy had once told him, in one of their rare serious moments, that while the things he did were sometimes mean, they were also usually very funny, and that as long as the hilarity outweighed all other factors, they'd continue to tolerate it. When Kakashi had pointed out that some of the shit he had put them through just for shits and giggles had been in no way funny, even for the most deranged mind, Guy had patted him on the shoulder and told him that it didn't matter, and that they'd put up with him anyway because they understood. Really? Kakashi had responded to that by pointing out that men like Danzo Shimura also had many very understandable, if extreme, justifications behind all of their subversive actions. But of course, he and Guy both knew that that wasn't the same thing. His first team had already been claimed by death. This one had to remain intact. He'd be the first to die here, not the last. Not if he could help it. Tell me, you three, he asked them, what do you know of Uzushiogakure? They possessed a great knowledge of sealing techniques, enough to make the major villages fear them, Shikamaru answered, and for that they were destroyed. Is that all the academy taught you? Kakashi asked. Shikamaru shook his head. They didn't teach us anything, really. They just pointed to it on a map and told us it's gone now. I actually had to look it up in the library to find out why. It was only after a few hours of searching through old war logs that I found the answer, squeezed into one tiny sentence. I see, Kakashi murmured. Well, this was expected. Konoha was very ashamed of this defeat, you see. Uzushiogakure no Sato was one of our greatest allies. The first Hokage's wife, Mito Uzumaki, was from Uzushiogakure no Sato herself. The swirl on the back of all the Jonin vests is the symbol of the Uzumaki clan, the main component of Uzushiogakure. They are now extinct in designation. That means that the family name has formally died out, but their people themselves have not, Shikamaru explained at Naruto's quizzical look. There might be more Uzumaki out there who don't actually call themselves that. For example, Tsunade, one of the Sannin, is a Senju by name, but she has Uzumaki blood through her grandmother Mito. Most of the survivors were women and children. Of the latter, many were orphans when they were transported out of the country, and so they grew up never knowing of their true heritage. Ino scratched her head. So what about Naruto? Kakashi was about to spout the old S-class secret cover story, but Naruto beat him to the punch. The old man Hokage said that they didn't know who my parents were, so they gave me the name Uzumaki after these guys, I guess. Better than Konohamaru. He literally got named after our village, eh? Naruto's a swirly fish cake, Ino snickered. No, you're a swirly fish cake. Your mom's a swirly fish cake. Your swirly fish cake's a mom. Kakashi raised an eyebrow. You guys sure are talkative after all that work. No, it's okay. Go on, sensei, Ino smiled sweetly. Kakashi cleared his throat. As I was saying, most of their knowledge on sealing, which was generations in the making, is now all gone. Though Uzushiogakure no Sato was a powerful village, probably the most powerful of the minor villages, actually, it was still tiny in comparison to the others. Naturally, they were crushed when faced with such a large coalition of enemy forces. Konoha was not able to arrive in time to send aid, and that has forever shamed us. Since then we have never failed to help an ally. Officially. Instead of giving up and surrendering, however, they decided to go down fighting. And so, rather than let all of their precious knowledge fall into enemy hands, they simply, he swept his hands across the ghostly town of ash and fallen earth, destroyed it all themselves. Oh, Ino said sadly, staring at the eerie silhouette the abandoned village cut against the horizon. Naruto, your birthday is on October 10th, right? Shikamaru suddenly asked. Naruto wrinkled his nose. Yeah, why? Shikamaru looked away, a strange expression on his face. I was just asking. It doesn't matter. Kakashi continued his story. Uzushiogakure was once the world's leader in sealing. They had tens, even hundreds, of sealing masters, not specialists, masters, inside these walls at any given moment in time. I don't mean the standard seal work that we have now. Every village has at least a squad of people with good enough handwriting to slap a character or two of chakra-laden calligraphy onto a scroll, and design teams specifically focusing on seal-based projects like security or communication. I mean people who dedicate their livelihoods to this field. People who can fight with nothing but Fuinjutsu. People who can single-handedly capture the great bijou. People who can look at any situation and just instantaneously invent their own mark for that purpose at the drop of a hat. So who is it now? Ino asked. Now, Konoha is the world's leader, Kakashi answered her. Anything that could be salvaged went to us, thanks to arrangements done by Mito Uzumaki's descendants. And how many do we have? Naruto asked. Throughout our entire history? 5, Kakashi said solemnly. Naruto's face fell. And of those 5, 3 are dead, 1 has betrayed Konoha, and none of them were even remotely comparable to the might of an entire village. The children were silent, stunned. Finally, Shikamaru asked timidly, who were they? Mito Uzumaki, the wife of the first Hokage, as you know. She was the first person to capture the Nine Tails and seal it into herself. She lived to old age, but never became anyone's teacher. Next was Jiraiya, one of the 3 Sannin, who taught the yondaime. The yondaime's wife was also a sealing master. They both died during the night of the Kyuubi attack. Jiraiya is no longer taking on any students. And of course we've all heard of Orochimaru. What about you, sensei? Yeah, do you know anything about sealing? I can use sealing scrolls, I can use basic theory to customize something more complicated, and I can summon Niken. Better than most, but nowhere near the levels of mastery these people had. Before everything went up in smoke, of course, Kakashi told them shortly. To say anything more might lead to inconvenient questions about his teacher, and then he'd have to dance around the subject of Minato-sensei. Though he doubted Hiruzen Sarutobi would execute him for letting the secret slip. Hell, Naruto already knew half of it anyway thanks to that jerk-ass Mizuki. Making the fact that Naruto was Minato Namake's son known might put him in unnecessary danger. Iwabikure was still extremely sore about the whole one guy with one technique wiped out an entire regiment in under an hour thing, and there was no telling what they'd end up doing if they found out that he had left behind a convenient target for revenge in the form of a young and untrained son. Say, Shikamaru mused, can sealing scrolls preserve food? I think they can, said Ino. Right, sensei? Can they preserve fresh seafood, like sushi, even in a desert? Shikamaru asked. Kakashi clapped his hands. All right, my cute students, it is getting late, and so it is bedtime for all of you now. Chop chop, the sun hasn't even set yet. Naruto protested. Shut up, Naruto. Ino hissed. This is Kakashi-sensei we're dealing with. Don't turn down orders to sleep. Tomorrow we'll be complaining the sun isn't even up yet, but don't forget the standard security measures, Shikamaru muttered, reaching for his roll of ninja wire. Who wants to take first shift? I won't be attacking you tonight, Kakashi promised them. Are you going to attack us in the middle of the night and say I lied? I'm a shinobi, when we complained that you promised? Ino asked dryly. I'm wounded that you think so little of me, Kakashi told her. Seriously though, all of you go to sleep. I'm planning a great deal of training for you lot tomorrow and I want you to be at full working potential, which will not happen if you do not sleep off that 3-hour hike. It's still standard Konoha protocol to do night shifts for all defensive purposes. And we can't just make you stay awake all night, sensei, Shikamaru said. Even if you've probably done it before, you fought in the Third War, right? Kakashi smiled at him, though he knew that no one could see it in this light. Sleep, he thought, layering a genjutsu over them. To their credit, all three of them, even Naruto, whose genjutsu skills were quite frankly abysmal, managed to resist it for a few seconds. They succumbed to it in the end though, and Kakashi would have been disappointed at himself if they hadn't, because this was a standard A rank taught to all jonin before they went on infiltration missions. In all honesty, Kakashi thought, as he sat beside their peacefully sleeping faces, there really was no point in coming here. There are many other ways to improve stamina and chakra control. But it was something that they had to see. Anyway, this is for you, Kushina-san. I know you would have taken your son here at least once in his lifetime, had you been alive. The next day, sensei, I finished learning all the genjutsu you assigned us. What are you doing? I asked. Kakashi-sensei was sitting at edge of the water, letting sparks of chakra jump off his fingertips and skid across the waves. Things. What sort of things? Stuff, I sighed. What sort of stuff? Things, he answered, shoulders shaking in a silent giggle. Just kidding. I'll explain it to you. Call Ino and Naruto over here too. All of you will be walking back to the mainland shortly, and you'll need the rest. When Ino and Naruto came over, he pointed to the sea. Contrary to popular belief, water by itself is a very mediocre electric conductor. However, most sources, even freshwater lakes and purified tap water, have various ions dissolved in them. It's these freely floating ions that provide the electrons needed for conduction. Naruto, please tell me you learned about this, at least. Yeah, Ino taught me just last week, Naruto said proudly. Kakashi-sensei gave one of his little half-smiles. Well, continuing on that note, the human body is actually a conductor. A rather bad one, because lipids, or fats, work as insulators, but if you were to touch an electrocuted person with your bare hands you'd be electrocuted too. Wait, then why do people, Naruto interrupted, jerking his body in imitation of an electric shock. Because our nerves work by electric impulses. No, we don't have metal wires inside of us. Our nerves simply store the energy using ions and other charged molecules, Kakashi-sensei told him before he could ask. Small voltages, like the 240V inside a normal house, will cause the nerves in your muscles to freeze up, which is why in most cases people can't move or call for help. They die from being unable to breathe, not the actual electricity. It's the larger shocks, say, 1000 V while fixing power plant wires that blow people across the room and stop their heart. Whoa, said Naruto. Anyway, this exercise simply helps me test how individual charges travel in comparison to, say, a stream of continuous charges. Lightning chakra behaves differently from actual electricity in certain cases. Knowing the properties of both is necessary in launching a successful nerve-based attack. And let me tell you, the human brain is a surprisingly delicate thing. It can and will completely liquefy under the right concentration of charge. To demonstrate, let's connect this watermelon, which we will pretend is someone's head, to a high-voltage capacitor. The Hokage's office. Hiruzen Sarutobi's eye twitched. Kakashi Hatake really knew how to get on his nerves. Both literally and figuratively. The letter that had arrived on his desk yesterday had some sort of static charge on it that shocked everyone who tried to touch it, save for him, the intended recipient. It had really been a pain in the ass for his paperwork Chunin. How they got a pain in the ass from touching it with their fingers was something that he still couldn't figure out. And if that little prank hadn't told him that yes, it was Kakashi Hatake and not an imposter sending the note to buy more time before forces were sent out looking for a missing team, then it was the irritatingly messy scrawl and the even more irritatingly smug tone in the actual note. Salutations Hokage-sama. Team 7 will be coming home about 3 days late 'cause of a little training detour. Winking and laughing, hope this doesn't mess up your schedule lol asterisk, shocked, sincerely, your favorite person ever OMG, laughing face, Kakashi Hatake-3. P.S. I hope you liked my new font. I think I should market it. What do you say? PSS, PDS? Here's a skateboarder. DB-8. There was a very special hell reserved for people who wrote in alternating caps lock, and Kakashi had just bought himself a one-way ticket there. He was going to make sure Kakashi's life would be very, very painful once he got back. Well, actually, he had already been planning to make Kakashi's life very, very painful regardless. This letter just made him feel less guilty about it. Meeting room 4. Administration Compound East 32. All right, settle down, maggots. Ibiki Marino boomed over the din due to several unforeseen circumstances. We are going to reorganize the whole Chunin exams. Yes, you heard me right. The whole. Entire. Thing. And what's more, we are going to do it in one day. Why? Because of reasons that are way above your clearance level. Reasons involving conservative old bastards who, hopefully, won't be hearing about this last-minute revamp until everything has already been put into motion. What the hell? We spent months coming up with this thing, and now we're just going to redo it all at the 11th hour? Just how special is this conservative old bastard that we have to redesign an entire Chunin exam just for him? Well, at least we'll have a bit of unpredictability this time around, including the third phase? Really? A rather unwise newbie in the front whispered. Yes. Ibiki yelled. That includes the head proctors too. So listen up. Starting from the first phase, that part is completely scratched, because guess what? I won't be there. And before you ask why, it's because during that time, I will be needed somewhere else, somewhere way above your intelligence clearance level. So count yourselves lucky, maggots. And the wannabe Chunin, who aren't here, can count themselves extra lucky, too, twice lucky, since I won't be there, either, Anko snapped. The fuckers. Which means, Ibiki continued, that you'll be dealing with our replacements. Sure. Moto. Get up here. They're yours. I'm out of here. See ya later, suckers, Anko sang, letting the door slam behind her. It turned out that though Ibiki had claimed that the genin would be lucky he wasn't there, they wouldn't be that much luckier. Shirmasa and Moto Kishi were the lesser-known gods of the shinobi world, because they were the sort of guys who could make up illogical things as they went along and somehow still have it all work out. And the fact that these two were going to be the head planners for this thing. Right, Masa grinned, clapping his hands together. We've got a bit of work to do, lads, and you will be punished if it is not done. Kanahigakure no Sato, the front gate. Sensei, are you sure they'll be fine with us returning 3 whole days late for a standard C rank just because of your, training detour? Shikamaru asked. We'll be fine. As long as we got the messages in on time, I'm sure they won't mind our well-deserved vacation. Kakashi trailed off. There at the front gate, the Hokage himself was waiting for them in all of his pointy-hatted fury. Hello, Kakashi? You're late. Oh shit. Chapter 10. The Best Laid Schemes. The Hokage's Office. This would actually be pretty funny, Kakashi thought, if it wasn't already hilarious. There was a very important meeting scheduled yesterday, one that you were expected to be present at, the Hokage scolded him. Oh, was there? Kakashi shrugged. That's too bad. I didn't realize I was expected anywhere. Don't play dumb, Hatake. We both know that you knew you were wanted there. And besides, if you had come home on time, I would have been able to formally inform you of that matter, the Hokage told him. Well, if you had informed me that you were planning to inform me that I was needed, I actually might have, Kakashi retorted. Well, if you had informed me where you were going when you sent home that cute little note of yours, I would have been able to reply and tell you, the Hokage replied. You guys could have easily tracked me if you didn't figure out the code. My scent was all over that thing, Kakashi told him. It wasn't as if his code had been that difficult to decipher, anyway. What code? Oh. The Hokage looked very, very angry at that. What? Kakashi asked. I couldn't very well put I am taking them to the remnants of a once powerful allied village of Konoha for reasons that may or may not be important in an easily intercepted message, right? That doesn't change the fact that you were still late, the Hokage said, steadily becoming more and more irritated by the second. This isn't a matter of knowing or not knowing. This is standard protocol that applies to everybody, Kakashi. You might be special in many ways, but this is not one of them. It doesn't change the fact that I already missed your meeting, Kakashi shrugged, wondering why the Hokage was taking the time to lecture him on something he already knew. Oh well, luckily, the Hokage said dangerously, I rescheduled it just for you. Because you're just that special, aren't you, Kakashi? Kakashi swallowed nervously. You three may leave, the Sandaime nodded to the three genin in the room. I need to, have a nice little conversation with your sensei. Alone. Is he in trouble? Ino asked hopefully. The Sandaime gave her a dry smile. Of sorts. There was a clinking of coins as money exchanged hands. What? Kakashi asked, feigning hurt. You guys had a tab running on me getting in trouble? On how long it would take before the Hokage finally called you out? Yeah, Ino said, with a defiantly triumphant expression on her face. I hate you guys, Kakashi muttered. You deserve it, the Sandaime shrugged, completely unsympathetic. Let's go eat ramen, Naruto yawned. Nose pays. Wait, what? Ino asked, as he and Shikamaru immediately put their fingers to their noses. Haha. Naruto cheered. Ino's paying. What? Why me? Because you didn't touch your nose, Naruto explained, as if that was the most sensible thing in the world. Ino turned red with anger. Excuse me, but that's just stupid. You do have the most money out of all of us right now, Shikamaru shrugged. Because of the bet, you know. Yeah, and I'm hungry. And it's your fault I don't have money, Naruto chimed in. What, so I get punished for winning the bet? I'll lose more money than I gain from your silly little bet with the way you eat ramen. Ino yelled. Besides, why are you blaming your lack of money on me? It's your fault for taking the bet in the first place, and then betting wrong. And besides, it isn't nose pays. It's nose goes. Nose pays doesn't even rhyme. It doesn't have to. Naruto said. Who said so? Ino asked. Naruto stopped short. Then, he grinned brightly as he decided upon a clearly indisputable answer. I did. What? Who said you could make the rules? Ino yelled, grabbing Naruto's ear, to the boy's pained protests. I'm the only girl on this team, so therefore I get to be the boss. And the boss makes the rules. So therefore, my rule is that you take responsibility for your own irresponsible eating and spending habits, and pay for your own stupid ramen. Whoa. 1. Ramen is not stupid, because ramen is like the best food ever, and 2. Who said being the only girl on the team means that you're the boss? Naruto asked. I did. Ino responded triumphantly. Well, clearly, the logic of our boss of this team debate has taken on the form of an infinite recursive loop, Shikamaru muttered. A what? Naruto asked, scratching his head. He means an autocracy justified by the autocrat, Ino smirked. Naruto frowned. Stop using big words to confuse me. Don't think I can't see you smiling like that. See, the rules also state that the boss has to know how to use big words properly. And since you don't even know what they mean, you're automatically ruled out as boss, Ino told him. And also, I was born on September 23rd and you were born on October 10th, so that means that I'm older than you are, and that means I'm the boss of you. But Shikamaru was born on September 22nd, so he's older than you. By a day, Naruto said. That means that Shikamaru gets to be the boss. Right, Shikamaru? Shikamaru, if you make me pay for Naruto's ramen, I'm telling my mom who will tell my dad who will tell your dad who will tell your mom, Ino warned. I changed my mind, Naruto. Pay for your own ramen, Shikamaru grinned. What? Naruto yelled. Shikamaru, I was counting on you. You two-timing traitor, that's alliteration, said Ino. Anyone who uses alliteration in an insult is automatically disqualified from candidacy for being the team boss when Kakashi-sensei isn't around. Is it just me, or is Kakashi-sensei's insanity mildly contagious? Shikamaru asked. Ino and Naruto paused and looked at him, then at each other, and back at him. Naruto narrowed his eyes and stroked his invisible beard. Nah, it's just you, he finally concluded. Yep. Definitely just you, Ino agreed. And since I backed you up on that one, I no longer have to pay for your ramen. What? That doesn't even make any sense. Contrary to the highly entertaining discussion about ramen that Kakashi's 3 students were having outside, he could hear them through the window, and it seemed like they were having a lot more fun than he was. The atmosphere inside the Hokage's office was extremely, well, unentertaining. He was not happy, and the Sandaime knew that Kakashi knew that, which only made it worse for the two of them. You had something you wished to talk with me about, Hokage-sama? Kakashi asked. Because if it was about me missing that meeting, it really couldn't be helped. You see, I don't need any of your ridiculous excuses, Hataki, the Sandaime snapped. I had enough of that with Obito, thank you very much. Kakashi visibly winced, and Hiruzen pushed down the guilt that came from bringing up such a painful memory. It really couldn't be helped, though. Sometimes, only words that remarkably cutting could keep him in line. Kakashi himself used those same tactics to manipulate others. So he really shouldn't be feeling the least bit guilty doing the same thing in return. Sir, Kakashi cleared his throat. Yes. The meeting. The one where you were supposed to submit your Chunin Exam nominations. It was rescheduled to tomorrow. And I don't want a word out of you, Hataki. The Hokage held up his hand when Kakashi's jaw lowered to protest. We both know you delayed your return on purpose. I'm asking you why. Why? Kakashi asked, eye narrowing. I don't see why I had to be there. I'm not nominating my team. I thought that much was obvious, when I didn't even bother to come back even 5 hours late. But just in case it wasn't clear, I'll tell it to you plain and simply right now, they will not be taking the upcoming Chunin exams. Well, isn't this just lovely? He had been hoping to avoid this conversation. But it was a foolish hope. Kakashi was not a Suma or Kurenai or Guy. He knew better than any of them that an early promotion was more of a punishment than a reward. I beg to differ. Yes, they will be. What? I think, as their Jonin instructor, I have the power to withhold my nomination, and as the Hokage, I have the power to command you to give your nomination. The temperature in the room was stifling as the two of them glared at each other. In the end, it was Kakashi who caved first, and he choked out, why? The betrayed look on his face made Hiruzen's heart wrench, but the Sandaime was less than moved by his sentiment. It is for their own safety. What? How is that for their own safety? Kakashi rasped, his voice slowly rising in volume. The difference in skill between a high genin and a low chunin is very little, Hokage-sama. In fact, there are genin who are more skilled than chunin, but simply haven't advanced yet because of bad luck. Yet chunin are cleared to go out and risk their lives on frontline battle missions, while genin are not. And given the situation with Sand, Wave, and Cloud right now, this will not end well. They're only 12, Hokage-sama. It's too early for them, no matter how skilled they are. I'm not going to let them go out there and, you were only 6 when you became Chunin, the Sandaime reminded him. Yes, and what a model human being I turned out to be. Kakashi spat bitterly, and for a second there his true self was showing through the layers of idiocy and sarcasm and puerile insanity. A self-loathing, guilt-torn veteran who had seen and done and taken and given and lost too much too early. Hiruzen Sarutobi ran a hand through his hair. He really was getting too old for this. But the Sandaime forced him to say, I don't care, Kakashi. Well, I kind of do. Kakashi exploded in reply. It's the least you could tell me in return. I come home from a regular C rank expecting some kind of briefing on this whole hidden cloud and wave country clusterfuck, and instead I'm told that I'm supposed to enter my team into this potentially deadly competition for an even deadlier reward disguised as a rank advancement, and after all that, it's somehow my fault that I didn't enter them just because I took them home late. Even though I didn't know that you meant for me to come home on time so you could tell me all this, and thus didn't plan accordingly. Well, barring the fact that you are expected to return home on time anyway, if you had told me where you were going, maybe I would have been able to reply with the reason of urgency, the Hokage reminded him. And stop trying to pull that I didn't know card on me. I dropped about 1,000 hints regarding your team being ready for the exams in the past month alone. Oh, not this again, Kakashi groaned. Look, before you lay into me about how I didn't follow protocol by not telling you where I'd be during our fake vacation, I took them to Whirlpool Country, okay? No, I'm not going to waste time trying to explain to you why, because you know why. And before you express sarcastic surprise, yes, I am still capable of sentiment, and no, I did not let the S-class secret slip. Unlike pretty much the fucking rest of Konoha, he pinched the bridge of his nose. Look, how about we move away from that? Back to our initial point of discussion? Kakashi crossed his arms. Yes. Let's. Something about entering fresh genin into the Chunin exams even though I don't want to. What could possibly justify that drivel you just spouted at me, old man? If you hadn't noticed, Kakashi, this year's graduating class was almost entirely composed of clan children and child prodigies. Your team alone could put many of our jonin to shame. I know you've been teaching them B-rank and A-rank ninjutsu, Kakashi. I've even observed Shikamaru experimenting with a few of his own earth jutsu derivatives and original techniques. A mere Chunin exam. That's almost nothing, compared to some other very real dangers that exist in this world, Kakashi, the Sandaime snapped, nearing the end of his patience. A mere Chunin exam? A mere Chunin exam? I don't know what planet you're living on, but this will be no mere Chunin exam. Or have you forgotten that the Hidden Sand has been invited to participate in this thing too? So I'm being completely hysterical, but I'm not acting this way for no reason, Hokage-sama. You know they're planning something. We've known they've been planning something for months now. This round of Chunin exams will be when they'll strike. I'd wager my firstborn child on that. Don't make empty wagers, Kakashi. We both know no woman will be bearing you children. It's an expression. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is yes, I already know that, and yes, I have already taken precautions against them to the best of my ability. Most of the Chunin proctors from the first round and all of the Chunin proctors from the second round have been replaced with disguised ANBU. We'll have teams tracking all the genin at all times, so you do know that Sand is planning something then. Great. Would you like to explain to me, then, how in hell are you justified in knowingly entering rookie genin into something that you knowingly understand involves another entire hidden village? If you would let me explain, it's total insanity. And that means a lot, coming from me. Kakashi exploded, his front of calmness completely gone. What the hell, old man, they're my team. You can't just put them there. You can't just take them away from me like that. You can't fucking do that to me, you just can't. So that's what the problem is. Of course. That's always the problem with Kakashi. For the love of the Rikudo, the Sandaime exhaled. 1. I am your Hokage. I can and I will. End of story. 2. I'm not doing this to take them away from you. This is not some petty revenge against you for your obnoxious behavior. This is a legitimate security issue that I have been planning against for months. There are plenty of other people who want those children hurt, and I am not one of them. We are dealing with very serious situation right now, so for the love of the gods, be logical. But what if the Sandaime could take it no longer? Slamming his hands on his desk, he shot out of his chair, towering over Kakashi, despite him being the shorter one of the two. For the last time, Hatake. Whatever Sand is planning will pose no danger to these children directly. They want money, they want to discredit Konoha, they want to draw more business to themselves. That's all. But they have no interest in actually kidnapping and inducting these children into their own private forces, unlike a certain councilman who disagrees with me on how we should teach our children. A certain councilman who, as we speak, is devising 101 new ways to steal this hat from me. Those words finally stunned Kakashi into silence. But not for long. A man with such experience in violence would not be so easily cowed by a few angry words. Oh, fuck me. Him again? Yes, him again. As such, they will have to take these exams while I deal with him again, because the children are untouchable while they are still busy competing. This is the one thing he doesn't have any control over. All I need is a month, Kakashi. Please. Danzo Shimura is more dangerous than the Hidden Sand any day. To you, and your cute little political plots, maybe, but to me, at least Danzo Shimura isn't going to end up killing them, Kakashi responded coldly. He had completely shut down by now, which was good, because he was no longer freaking out, but also bad, because a pissed-off Kakashi was something no sane man would want to tango with for any longer than he had to. You're right. Danzo Shimura won't kill them. He'll only do worse than that. Fuck Danzo Shimura. Why don't you just get rid of him already, if you hate him so much? It was a question he already knew the answer to. But Kakashi simply wasn't the right type of person to see this mess properly at first glance. It wasn't that he was one of those all-combat no-politics shinobi, because Kakashi was definitely as manipulative as the rest of them. Ever since he could talk, he had been wringing out concessions in any argument he ever involved himself in. As for bargaining skills, the cheapskate could magically get stranglehold grips over every possible good deal that presented itself to him, but his true political skills lay in planning. Kakashi was a planner, at the end of the day, and a very efficient one at that. And therein lay the problem. He was just too damn efficient for his own good, and bureaucracy was the death of efficiency. For all of his inexplicable wildness and unpredictability, Kakashi Hatake was a very logical person. His actions might not have translated his thought processes very well, but Hiruzen knew that every path his brain took was a path that actually made sense. Unlike fucking Danzo Shimura, who didn't seem to understand that those fanatically devoted human robots he called shinobi were shit for infiltration missions. Kakashi, please see reason, and just follow my orders, please, Hiruzen pleaded frantically. You know I only want what's safest for those children. Just because you're not scared of Danzo Shimura doesn't mean I'm not. At this, the Sandaime snorted. I am not afraid of Danzo Shimura. But I refuse to let him use any chaos caused by the hidden sand to further his own agenda. Shikaka Nara knows why. Inoichi Yamanaka knows why. Shibi Aburame knows why. Hell, even Heishi Hyuga, who hates everyone, agrees with me on this. Why won't you? If you tell me every single little thing he's had his fingers tangled in since day one, I will, the Sandaime said. When he dies, a lot of things are going to fall apart, things that we aren't prepared to deal with all at once. We have to secretly and gradually dismantle his little side projects before we can make any other moves, something I'm already having a lot of trouble with as it is. Kakashi raised an eyebrow sarcastically. Need help? Look, Kakashi, if you're so worried about them, the ANBU commander and I can turn a blind eye to whatever non-mission activity you get up to, as we always have, the Sandaime growled, trying to sound fed up with the boy's overprotective parent tendencies despite the fact that Hiruzen actually found it extremely endearing. I can't let you engage directly as their jonin teacher, officially, but I obviously have no control over a highly eccentric and unstable individual acting independently. If you get caught, the genin in question might be disqualified at worst, or best, depending on how you look at it. Kakashi stopped to consider this proposal. Out of curiosity, what did Asuma and Kurenai have to say about this? Nothing, really. They were planning to enter their students anyway. Oh, okay. That makes it all better, Kakashi said sarcastically. The Sandaime pinched the bridge of his nose. Let's compromise, shall we? Let me write their names down for this one thing. 1 month, Kakashi. That's all I ask? 1 month, for me to keep them out of Danzo Shimura's hands. Once it's all over, I won't promote them to Chunin without your permission, until they turn 16 and are allowed to make these decisions for themselves. And what about during the exams? Kakashi asked. I thought we made it clear earlier that we have already done everything we could to make sure none of them die, the Sandaime said flatly. Kakashi swallowed, but remained silent, like a petulant child. Hiruzen Sarutobi sighed. You know, in times like this we cannot give any foreigners the impression that the situation in Konoha is anything but perfectly normal. I know, Kakashi growled. Of course he did. Hatake noses and ears, better than the Inazaka, supposedly. But only for 2 generations. And no more after that, if Hiruzen's suspicions about Kakashi's preferences were correct. Then you understand? Kakashi seemed like he wanted to throw another tantrum, but eventually, he let out a long breath and swallowed his anger. Fine, he huffed. I know you hate me for this, Kakashi, so remember that I'm a government-sanctioned military dictator above all else, the Sandaime replied, equally curt. I still don't agree with this, Kakashi growled. Hiruzen sighed. I didn't expect you to. I don't agree with me either. You're right about me, you know. I'm a horrible, horrible person. Shut up, you know this is the best way, the Sandaime snapped. Danzo Shimura or Sunagakure? Please, main meeting room, the Hokage Tower, 11:30 a.m. Tibua Cute, Hidoriya Himikaze, and Ayama Toraikira. I nominate my team, Team 4, Tama Jin, Aina Yeshu, and Rurishin Kenrani. And so it went. One by one, each jonin went by until, finally, I am Edo Gai, nominate Team 9, Niji Hyuga, Tenten, and Rock Lee. And then all eyes were on the 3 rookie sensei. The Hokage looked at him expectantly. Kakashi swallowed, and then pasted a stupid grin onto his face. I, Kakashi Hatake, nominate my lovely minions, I mean, my 3 cute students, Shikamaru Nara, Ino Yamanaka, and Naruto Uzumaki for the Chunin exams. What? But they're rookies. Then I, Asuma Sarutobi, nominate Team 10 for the Chunin exams, Choji Akimichi, Sasuke Uchiha, and Hinata Hyuga. And I, Kurenai Yuhi, nominate Team 8, Sakura Haruno, Kiba Inazaka, And Shino Abirame, all the rookies? The Hokage nodded. If that's all then, excuse me, Hokage-sama, but I must protest. Some Chunin suddenly stood up. Ah, right. That was their academy teacher. Good guy, if a little misguided. He had treated Naruto like an actual human being despite being the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, so that was points in Kakashi's book as far as he was concerned, although he still didn't remember the guy's name. Don't bother, Yumino. Oh, so that was his name. Yeah, he's nuts anyway. I don't care. Loud guy kept saying. What was his name again? They just graduated from the academy 6 months ago. They're not ready, you don't say? Kakashi thought sarcastically, but then the Hokage gave him a sharp look, and Kakashi sighed, holding his hands up in an I give gesture. Listen. I don't know who you are and I don't particularly care. But those kids are no longer babies in your care. They are my soldiers, and I will command them as I see fit. Besides, a little failure will be good for them. Show them a taste of the real world. He shot a look at the Hokage. They're happy? Yes, very. You expect them to fail? Loud guy asked. No, I expect them to pass. That's why I nominated them, Kakashi told him with finality. Unfortunately,